You know, I think a lot of people would expect me to cover a trading card game anime during Anime August. I think that's to be expected. I mean, after all, trading card games are kind of one of my bread and butter subjects on this channel. And yeah, the other one's going to happen too. But, you know, I could just take the easy route. Just cover Yu-Gi-Oh! Or some shit. But if the last episode was any indication, I don't cover basic shit. So, let me ask you a question. What happens when they make a card game-based anime and they never make the card game?
Well, you get live on Cardliver Kakeru, one of the most generic and arbitrary card game shows I've ever seen.
And I'm counting chaotic in that, so you know this is going to be shit. I'm not going to go into super heavy detail. I'm just going to cover the first 8 episodes, really. Because I just want to show you guys why I really don't want to watch the other 43.
This is Kakeru, a kid who plays live on, otherwise known as Cardliver, who has never won a single game.
Fair enough concept. A bit cliched, but at the time, card game anime weren't really doing this. At the time. See, this really doesn't age well when you realize that just 3 years later, Cardfight Vanguard would come out. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about Cardfight Vanguard here. I'm pretty sure that's probably its own massive series of videos. But let's just say Aichi Sendo has a very similar backstory to Kakeru. In terms of that whole win-loss ratio thing. And Aichi is one of my favorite anime protagonists of all time. Kakeru is not.
Kakeru is pretty much the all-in, energetic loudmouth that's the stereotype for anime protagonists.
Which certainly does not help the character stand out. But someone who does stand out for mostly the right reasons is Ai.
She's considered the best Cardliver at Kakeru's elementary school and wears her...
Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I don't know what the fuck to call those things that they wear. I mean, the way they function, they're basically like dual discs from Battle City, so I guess that's what I call them? Dual discs? She wears one on her leg. Right, so I guess I should tell you how the game works. I'd be doing more than this show does.
Basic premise is simple. You summon monsters, you attack with monsters, attacks to the player mill cards out of their deck. If your deck has no cards in it, you lose.
They do a good job of explaining this, you know, just overall concept with this sample game here, but I notice a problem when they go further in depth than just that basic thing.
In this battle, they actually show the numbers of what monsters are doing.
But they seem to go back and forth on whether or not they want to provide you with this information. Oh, and speaking of information they want to go back and forth on providing you with, let's talk about the intro real quick. Yeah, I know that doesn't sound related, but trust me, it is.
What you're seeing right now is the opening from the first 3 episodes of the show.
And what you may not realize about this until you watch that is that they literally just splice together scenes from the first 2 episodes in a lazy-ass edit. I mean, okay, I would give them some credit on this, considering the fact that it's a little bit different from the way that others do their intro, because they're normally fully animated with their own original animation. And they display a lot of characters that aren't necessarily in the show yet. And, you know, they may be trying to prevent certain spoilers. And I'm going to bring up one example that shows that I don't think that explanation works in this case either. Because, you know, it indicates that they don't give a fuck about that.
Anyway, one of the big mechanics in this game is live change, which turns the player into one of the monsters.
And that's pretty much it. From what I can tell, it does restrict what can deal damage to you based on like the power of your live change card. And I think if your live change card gets defeated, it goes away. But there was another time where it didn't, and I'm very confused about how that works. So right, Kakeru determines that he lost this match because he doesn't have a live change card. Even though later games, people win without being live changed. He even wins without being live changed. It has whatever.
After school, Kakeru finds a puppy with a gem on its head. Okay.
Who I can't remember the name of, and this show has barely any information in text online, even though the entire series is available. And I would just rewatch these episodes to remember what the damn thing's name is, but no. So instead, I'm just going to spend this time talking about how hipster I am for even knowing that this show exists.
So these guys are after the puppy for some reason.
And that reason is that he makes live change cards.
Predictable anime thing number 47. Main character gets superpower from a Guffin character. Predictable anime thing number 48. Big Bad shows up in the first 2 episodes.
And I swear this is the fucking worst thing. Not the anime cliche, no. The villain's actual actions.
So the main villain shows up to take over the Cardliver or whatever the fuck against Kakeru, right? Later in the same episode, he says that it doesn't matter because the card was already created.
So what you're telling me is that it became pointless to continue pursuing the dog once that live change card got made, right? Why the fuck did you step in to fight the kid yourself then? Just want to show off your big dick dragon card?
Oh, right. The villain can defeat monsters that attack him without life changing.
Which, you know, that's not broken at all. Okay, I'm willing to give them credit that maybe it's like, oh, he's actually already live changed and his monster form just looks like a regular dude. Right. That is straight up cheating then. I mean, okay, granted, you could probably make the argument that a dog turning a card in Kakeru's hand into the live change card, that's technically cheating as well, but I can defend that.
See, that card was already in his hand, and all the dog did was activate the super special life change magic of what the fuck.
Which actually works better than the type of straight up cheating that you see some Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists do. I mean, think about it. Yugi gets an ancient Egyptian fucking pharaoh to take over playing the game for him. And that's not as bad even as Jaden or Yuma, who both literally created cards on the spot and effects on the spot in the middle of the game.
Here, though, the dog actually gives Kakeru the card before the game actually starts.
And all that's needed here is for the dog to actually activate the ability to use the card. It literally shows up in his hand as the swirly magic mess of like, the magic hasn't been dude yet. It's clearly a different card than what was in his deck. They even set it up as a different card than what was originally in his deck. Therefore, yeah, not actually cheating, just magic being used as part of the story. It works.
Life Change also gives Kakeru the ability to talk to monsters, by the way.
And since we're talking about monsters being able to talk, this reminds me of how annoying salsa monkeys are. You know, those monkeys he summons at the beginning of every game. Why the fuck does he use those again? I mean, they're not any good. They're not any useful in some way other than being good.
Based on how his opening moves tend to go, I get the impression that he has to play them to get access to better cards.
But what the fuck is the cost system in this game anyway? I see symbols on the sides of the cards, and clearly he actually has to pay costs. Otherwise, he could just blue main wolf right on the first turn. Or be like, oh, I'm going to play my whole hand. There's clearly a cost system. And there are times when he plays more than one card in a turn, so it's not just one card per turn. Look, and there are symbols on the cards. There's clearly symbols to represent the individual elements. They appear on the cards of those elements, and there's a number symbol as well that appears on the sides of some of the cards. The fuck does it even mean? I mean, it seems like it's the number of monsters you have on your field, but sometimes that seems to skip around as to what you can summon. Because, like, I think later on he summons Tiger Dragon without having what was previously shown as the requirements, what was shown literally in that scene as the fucking requirements. Look, this may seem like a minor complaint. I understand that it's fiction, but here's the problem. When I don't understand what's going on, a few things happen here. The first thing that happens is that I'm a lot less invested because I don't know what's really going on. I don't know what cards he could be playing. I can't really put myself in the character's shoes to figure out what plays that I would have available to me in his situation. So basically, I can't be able to be like, well, shit, this is a tight spot. it takes tension away from the scene because I don't know how tight the spot really is.
Anyway, the other thing that happens in this match that fucking matters is that the villain summons a dragon.
And you just saw the only reason that this scene is important. Kakeru basically has a new boss monster to go after other than the life change card. Not that plot thread's gonna fucking matter, because that's gonna get resolved in episode 4 and not get replaced by anything ever.
Episode 3 is pretty much Kakeru winning his first game.
Let's talk about that opening sequence again, now that we're at the point where I need to talk about that opening sequence again.
So there's a third main protagonist that gets shown prominently in the opening from episode 4 onwards.
Which is why I would kind of get that they don't want to spoil that. I mean, after all, in this opening, he's presented as a part of the main protagonist team, an ally of Kakeru and I. Very prominently, I might add. But
he appears at the end of the third episode and is presented like he's gonna basically be Kaiba.
When in reality, he's harmless and one of the good guys the entire fucking time. What I'm thinking happened here is, number one, this is a fucking cash grab. Number two, this was originally an OVA, and those first 3 episodes were originally that OVA, and they just split them up to make them the actual series. But if they're doing that to make it the actual series, I don't understand why they didn't use the newer opening for those older episodes. Because newer opening is a lot better. Even with using the same song, it's a lot better.
The 4th episode does a decent job of introducing our third protagonist, a rich kid named Toru Makari.
Who is a French pretty boy that's obsessed with perfection. I'm not kidding about that. He randomly puts French words in what he's saying. And he literally breaks down in tears whenever one of his teammates so much as loses a game, even if it puts them in no danger of anything whatsoever. Yeah. Probably the most annoying character in the entire fucking show.
He challenges Kakeru to a game, and if he wins, Kakeru and I both have to join his team for the national championships.
You know, I was going to go off on a tangent about how they just go to national or world championships immediately in shows like this. But you know what? This show actually doesn't do that. They actually do escalate through different types of tournaments. They're actually starting with the local qualifiers leading up to regionals. So instead, the problem I have is that Toru acted like that wasn't part of the fucking process. Oh yeah, by the way, Toru wins. Just thought I'd let you know.
Since I just got onto them for being stupid, I guess I should applaud them for what they did with the good guy squad.
Because each of the main characters represents a different broad deck archetype. Look, this is a concept that is very specific to TCGs, so I'm just going to have to go to MTG 101 mode for a moment, if that's okay with you.
Almost every deck in most TCGs can be broken down into 3 major archetypes: aggro, midrange, and control. Aggro decks are, well, aggressive and have a tendency to rely on dealing lots of damage quickly to end the game quickly. Kakeru's tendency towards an all-out attack near the beginning of the series actually displays the typical mindset of a beginning aggro player: attack first and ask questions later. Control is shown by Toru, especially in his game against Kakeru, as the goal of a control deck is to prevent your opponent from getting off the ground and win the long game. Toru's matches in the local qualifiers aren't shown very often because, well, it's not always the most interesting to watch when a control player is dominating the field. Midrange falls right in between, stopping the opponent's moves until there's an opening in the defenses to go for the kill. This can be the least obvious archetype to pinpoint, but Ai's fight in episode 7 does a good job of displaying how she can shift between defense and offense when needed.
I pretty much have to give props here, since before Cardfight Vanguard, a control player being a good guy did not happen, like, ever. And midrange, it's very rare to see midrange even presented as an option, as a way to build your deck. It was pretty much all the characters were either control for the bad guys, especially the main villain, aggro for mostly the good guys, and crazy combo deck that would appear once and never show up again. That's pretty much all you had. So, you know, gotta give them credit where credit is due. There was another line here. The games feel a lot more dynamic because of the bigger variety of decks being shown on each side. When it's all aggro versus control, it feels very blah. You know, it just feels very homogenized. But we have like mid-range versus mid-range. We have mid-range versus aggro, mid-range versus control. We have lots of different styles of play going against each other, which creates a better dynamic feel when I actually understand what's going on.
Right, so now that I've praised the show for something really good, let's talk about Toru making Kakeru the captain of the fucking team.
Because that is somehow dumber than the main villain's actions earlier. So, right. He makes Kakeru the leader in order to get Kakeru to go last on their team, so that way I and Toru can win all the games and Kakeru doesn't have to fight, because Kakeru isn't very experienced. First of all, why the fuck did you put him on your team in the first place? Just because Blue-Maned Wolf? Okay, fantastic. It would be more interesting if you did a villain thing and tried to take the card from him. Second, there's no rule that says the leader goes last. And the leader is clearly the one who chooses the order. So why the fuck did you give the person that you don't want to have the power to do that, the power to do that? You're dumb!
In their first match of the tournament, Kakeru goes first.
And yeah, he actually does lose. Now, don't get me wrong. I think for the long-term narrative, it actually works pretty decently, but I still think it could have been handled better.
In this game, Kakeru learns about reaction cards, or cards that have effects when they're discarded for damage.
And the point of that was supposed to be that Kakeru needs to think before he attacks.
In fact, the dog
was his mentor, kind of, sort of, I guess, because, yeah,
mentally praises him for specifically not attacking.
And he loses immediately on the next turn. And everyone's mad at him for it.
Granted, his opponent top-decked the exact card he needed to win.
Which, sure, wouldn't have happened if Kakeru had just attacked. But here's the thing. From an in-character perspective, you're getting onto him for bad beats. And that's kind of gross as a human being. And from a storyline perspective, you are punishing the character for what you just said was the right decision.
It wouldn't be so bad if any of these more experienced players mentioned that it was clearly just getting luck sacked.
That doesn't matter, apparently. Nah, Kakeru just sucks. I'm skipping right to the finals because nothing else before it matters. Like, nothing. None of it.
So the team that they fight all use decks of the same element, air.
Which happens to be the element the first player on our team, I, uses.
We actually do see a bit of rivalry between her and her opponent crop up.
And as I said earlier, this is the point where it becomes very clear that I is our mid-range player.
She uses cards to control the game enough to keep the tempo on her side, and then ends with one big swing.
Which is exactly what a tempo player should do. So, Toru's up next, and, Can I get a banhammer hold the mustard?
Right, so Kakeru has to fight with the team's regionals berth on the line.
Wait a minute. I have just been informed that both teams are going to regionals anyway, and this doesn't fucking matter. Great. Fantastic. What the fuck are stakes again? Okay, look, I get it. I do. Sort of. We're supposed to see the air team again further down the line. They're clearly being given the character development to justify that. Could you present some sort of advantage to us that whoever wins gets other than my pride? Look, that's not good enough at this point. We've spent the past 3 episodes with every single game being depicted as having the team's tournament life on the line. Don't fucking go back on that and be like, oh, now it's just my pride. God damn.
This is one of the 2 or 3 games that actually takes a full episode to tell.
And as much as I just ragged on this show for lowering the stakes so much, I will admit it did add to the fact that this one swung back and forth a lot. It was very unclear who was going to win, so that added tension on that level. This is probably the best episode that I saw of the whole series.
And Kakeru winds up winning in part because of his willingness to use the abilities of his creatures instead of just attacking with them.
Oh, and summoning a dragon! Look, after 8 episodes of this one, I feel like I've seen both the best and worst aspects of the show. They actually do a decent job with dramatic tension from time to time, and there isn't a whole lot of random bullshit to make that random tension seemingly not mean anything. That's impressive for a card game anime before Cardfight Vanguard. And even then, Cardfight Vanguard has its fair share of random bullshit. Toshiaki Kai, anyone? But, you know, there's a lot of really annoying characters in this show, and the biggest problem is that they didn't seem to know what they wanted to focus on. It goes all over the place, switching focuses left, right, and center. I mean, I'm definitely not going to recommend this one to you guys, but if you did want to watch this one, you certainly could be watching worse. I mean, after all, Zexal exists.